Hello, everybody. Welcome to this particular live in our group. I am here with this beautiful lady. Hello, Deidre.
Hi.
So today we're, going to be talking about, aligning ourselves, lighting up, living on purpose, and just seeing where this beautiful conversation goes. As many of you know, this is pretty organic. We're just connecting here online. Actually, I haven't really said that publicly, but when these beautiful guests are coming on, there's no pre-discussion really about what we're going to be talking about, how we're going to navigate it. So what you guys are seeing is completely organic. And I love that because I think there's this beautiful truths and energies and stories that arise when we're just organic and in flow. So thank you for being on this show, Deidre.
Well, thanks for having me. And speaking of like organic conversation, every time we see each other, Leanne, we have the most interesting conversations that start in one point and end up in a different world. So I love that there's no framework for this, because that's where like authenticity can come from. That's where like we can just be and see what needs to arise. And there's just so much conversation that's been coming up, at least in my community in the last few weeks, and my own life, of a lot of changes, and we're all being forced to change right now. And I think what we really need more than ever is true connection and authenticity, rather than people always having maybe an agenda or a structure, because the truth is all of the structure we've had in the world has come crumbling down. So it's like, it's not, things that worked in the past aren't working now. And I think that people are craving this. So thank you for creating this platform. This is awesome.
Absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, I totally agree. I actually I remember actually, just because you're bringing it up, I remember when I first started doing radio interviews, right? And you're like, oh, yay, I get to do radio interviews. And you're thinking, this is great. We're going to get on, we're going to chat. And then I'd get laid out like every question they were going to ask me, and be expected to answer it beforehand. And then we just essentially like read off of what was already, and I was just like, this feels really unauthentic. It feels really like I just remember like having this whole idea about the industry and just kind of being shattered. Like,
well, that's so interesting, because my original training is in broadcast journalism. I used to be a radio person. I was the girl that was on location that was like, hey, I'm Deidre Sirianni and this is what's going on, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, it's cool because you get people excited and all that stuff. But the truth is, like, every kind of structure, and I'm just gonna share some truths with you. So when I was in Bali 5 months ago, a waterfall started whispering to me. And it was like, come over here. And I was just like, I looked at my friend and I was like, am I the only one that's hearing what's going on here? Because that's how I receive messages sometimes, is through sound. And so I went over to this waterfall and I was leaning against it. And my friend was looking at me like, what is she up to over there? Because being my friend is always an interesting adventure. And the waterfall gave me this really powerful message. And I really believe that that's what is unraveling right now. And this is just the beginning, this whole coronavirus, this whole thing that's arising, that's getting us to drop any inauthenticities that we have. Number one, just as you mentioned, to drop the structures that aren't real and to really go inwards. So the waterfall said to me, #waterfall wisdom. It said, any and all things, structures, etc., that are inorganic are going to come crumbling down. And so I was walking through a field of rice after, and I was thinking about rice, and I was thinking about how rice and like how trees and plants, there's a seed that's planted and then it grows, right?
yeah.
And as it's growing, there's no force, there's no pressure, there's nothing you can do really to make a seed grow. You can put fertilizer and you can do all these things to manipulate it. But the truth is, when it's fully birthed into the world, if it wasn't built organically, it's going to do harm when we eat it, when we touch it, etc., right? So I started thinking about the laws of nature because I study universal laws. And then I went down that rabbit hole for a little while and I realized, I was like, I think this is on all levels, because if you think about it, think about all the things that are happening in the world. Women with breast implants are getting really sick. It's not real, it's in your body. And this is a new thing that's really coming through. And if we think about all the structures like governments and like all of the things, the unseen is starting to be seen as not real, and the illusions are dissolving. So anything that is inorganic is falling down. And this is the beginning of that, I believe.
Well, I mean, it's funny you say that, because I mean, this is a conversation that I feel like I've been having with people for a while, like before the coronavirus, right? This sort of like people's trees are just getting shaken up, and all the untruth, all the things that are not real, all the things that are illusionary, all those fears and coping mechanisms, and like you're talking, false structures that they're relying on, we're starting to get shaken loose. Like I saw this in my community. I saw this in people that I already, was working with, that I knew. I don't know if it was happening much outside of my little bubble. I I sometimes realize that I have the privilege of living in kind of the Leanne. All right. So I think that I am the only one here. So let's continue the conversation. All right. So we'll wait until Leanne pops back on here and we'll see what it wants to happen here. So technology, I tell you, right? So I guess I'm taking over the channel, but I'm just going to check a message from her as well, because she is reconnecting to Zoom right now. You probably saw my face kind of leaning into the screen and being like, what's going on? I think she just froze for a second. But basically, like the illusions are really coming forward for us to see. And I think that's like such a gift that we have in this time. And one of the things that I've noticed with all of this that's happening among the people that I work with and in community is that a lot of us are getting rattled, right? A lot of stuff is coming up for us, because in these moments of isolation, in these moments of going inwards, in these moments of having to stay in one place and not go outside of ourselves as much, we're being forced to feel feelings and parts of ourselves that have maybe been there for a long time, that we've had coping mechanisms around, of avoiding, of running away from, which could be, sex, drugs, alcohol, dating, work, food, social media, which could definitely be a vehicle for that right now. But there's all of these different ways that
we can step away from ourselves and really avoid what's going on internally. So I really love that Leanne's created this conversation in this group on supporting each other, because I really feel like these conversations need to be had more often, and she's created a really authentic platform for that. So thank you to Leanne for that. So with that being said, one of the things that I've noticed in this time of transition, this space of things being forced, hey Leanne, I'm just continuing the conversation, is that there's two things that we can do in this time. We can use it to move ourselves forward and develop these new habits, these new conversations, these new rituals, these new ways of showing up for ourselves and gaining skills and insights and really growing. Or we can continue down old patterns of maybe stepping away from ourselves, maybe avoiding, maybe distracting ourselves from these feelings that are coming up. So Leanne, I lost you and it was blank for a while, and I was kind of looking at the screen like, am I frozen? Then I went to the Facebook page and it's just me kind of looking. So I just started talking a little bit. I laughed and I was like, oh, okay. So it's just me kind of like, acting like, when is she going to come back on? And I realized you weren't on anymore. So I just.
Awesome. I had no idea who was on anymore. I'm like, I was going back to the Facebook page and I'm like, okay, I don't know what Zoom is doing here. So I'm like, is it still playing? It wasn't showing it, but I was still like, hey, if people are here.
So what I was just sharing on before Zoom rudely interrupted us, I was talking about how like there's a couple things that we can do right now in this time, is we can use it to have these deeper conversations, work on ourselves, feel into the uncomfortable things that are coming up that maybe we've been so busy distracting ourselves from, that now that we're forced to deal with it, we can either continue with those coping mechanisms, which could be food, alcohol, sex, dating, work, whatever they are. Mine was definitely work distractions in the past. Or we can use it to settle in it and know that everything's coming up for a reason. And before you and I got on this conversation, we were talking about our personal lives and how is this a sign? Like the universe always has a plan and all of that. So I really think that this time now is such a great opportunity to go inwards and to ask ourselves those deeper questions, because those questions need to be answered for our own evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And, I mean, that's this keeps coming up again and again on these calls. And so I know that this means that we're all meant to continue giving this message and hearing it, whether it's for ourselves or other people in the group. But this whole needing to go inward, this being an invitation to go inward, to go into our hearts, to go into the feelings that maybe we haven't allowed ourselves to feel, to see what is not working in our lives, to see the reality of what's going on in our lives, right? There's just such a deep, juicy invitation here to really go in. And it's not necessarily going to be easy for everyone. I mean, we were talking, there's things coming up in my life. I'm just like, wow, like everyone's supposed to be doing the slow down. And like, I got people in my life doing the push in, it's like, come on. I was thinking coronavirus, woohoo, 2 weeks in isolation sounds like great. I can, get in, some extra meditation time, some more yoga, all of this. And it's funny, that's not been my reality. So it's interesting what it's kind of showing me. And, where I can, I can be stronger in my boundaries with other people and things like this, right? Like, I don't know fully what's emerging here because I'm still feeling through it and processing it, right. But it's there, right? And we don't, I think that's another good point. I don't think we have to know all the time what is processing or what's going on or what the end game is going to be. And
exactly.
And this is huge with this virus. I mean, we don't know how much longer we're going to be in isolation, when it's going to end, how the laws are going to change around it, finances, business. It's a huge point of not knowing. How can we actually relax and invite in that place of unknown as well, and just actually be in the flow and the feelings of what's coming up?
Yeah, that's a really great question. It's, I think that in our life so far as humans, we've been programmed to constantly go towards safety, right? To find safety, to create safety, and to feel safe within our personality, within our who we've always been. So our personality is our patterns, it's our habits, it's our the way that we show up every day, it's our actions, and it's our past. It's all programmed on the past. So it's like our personality, our ego, all of that stuff is who we've been known as our entire life, and we can cling to it to stay safe and to create protection around our heart, around our life, around our community, around our what's familiar to us. And it's interesting that it's being brought up for everyone right now. What I've noticed personally in the last 5 months is, now I'm grounded in one location because of this coronavirus. But before this, I was traveling for 5 months for work. I was working on creating connections in different parts of the world for, this event that I was working on taking to different places. And I was super excited. I was determined, and I was like, I felt really on purpose because I know what my purpose is. But so I was doing all this stuff, and there was a part of me that wasn't committing to certain dates, and I didn't know why, but I was like, okay, it's going to be maybe spring, maybe everything's going to happen in the fall. There were a lot of maybes, but this whole thing has shifted me to realize that, okay, that was probably my intuition speaking, definitely. And the
Totally.
second part is to always be flexible, because it doesn't matter if you've been focusing 6 months, 6 years, 10 years, 20 years, your whole life to creating some sort of safety or some sort of plan or some sort of way of being in your life. It can literally be pulled out of you in any moment, in any situation. And
Totally.
I think one of the biggest assets we can have in our life and in ourselves is to trust in the process, because if we don't trust in the process and surrender, we're going to make it really hard. And then secondly is to really look at those parts of our personality and the ways that we've coped in the past to stay secure, to stay safe, and ask ourselves, is it still serving us? Because this is a time of such change on so many different levels that we need to know that our cup that we have filled up with all of the knowledge that we've had so far to have a good business, to have a great relationship, to feel secure, to feel on purpose, blah, 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 all the stuff. Okay. We need to empty that cup now, because that cup is outdated, because the world is changing, and we need to have trust and let go in order for us to see the gifts, in order for us to see all of the miracles, all of the opportunities, all of the things that are coming to us. And that's what I'm noticing in my own life, and that's what I'm noticing with like my community. And I'm like, empty the cup, surrender, like let go of the past, and that's really been working for me.
I mean, it's so interesting to say that, because I'm like, the thing that's coming is like the irony of the messaging and the advertising that I've seen before this, right? It's like you're like, oh, certainty, right? I'm like, isn't that the funniest thing? Because our whole society is really built around this idea of certainty. Well, if you're an entrepreneur and you just build this one funnel and you do it this way, you're going to make six figures. And if you do this, you're absolutely going to have that result. And if you did, it's like almost all the advertising that I've really seen in the last several years has all been about this certainty. Like, if you just do this, this is going to be your outcome. And it's a bit of bullshit,
Yeah.
for lack of a more delicate term. Everybody is different. Everybody has had a different, set of experiences in their life. Everyone has different belief systems, so they're going to respond to some things and not other things. And, at the end of the day, we can't put definites on everything. Like, part of the human experience is kind of this unknown. And it's finding that safety within ourselves rather than in the world around us. So where can I find that safety in myself? Where can I find, that I'm aligned with my values? Where can I find that I am in my integrity? Where can I find that I am taking care of my own boundaries, my self-care, making sure that I'm making choices that serve me and my family, and finding those choices as our safety here, following our heart. That's the safety net, coming into a really deep inner trust that no matter what has happened in the past, you have this, you've got it. And maybe you don't know what that's going to look like. And maybe you don't know if that's going to be messy. And maybe it's going to be freaking delightful and blissful. I mean, you just don't know. And there, is a surrender and a trust and a safety that you can begin to actually find in that unknown, which I think is really challenging for people because we've been given this idea that everything has to be certain.
Right.
Like if you put away this much money, then you'll retire at this age and you'll be fine. And if you do this, you'll be fine. If you'll do that, you'll be fine. And that's not at all what we have going on right now.
No, no. And I really love that because it's like, and this is like really tuning into your intuition as well. And doing that inner work and asking yourself, what are your values? Because a lot of what we can be programmed into are more illusions online. And you were talking about safety and all of this. And for whatever reason, dating is coming up for me. I don't know why. I'm not dating. So I don't know why I'm like dating, but it's like in relationship even. And I know that you're intimacy expert and all of that. It's like, we're like, oh, but what are we? But like, what is this? And we create all of these, you know, these safety words for what something means in order to feel secure. But the truth is, we're never going to feel secure within anything that we create, within anything that we're a part of, within anything that we do, unless we truly are connected to ourself, our own internal navigation system, our values, and that we listen to our heart, because everything else is just a reflection of it. And the truth is, when you are radically aligned with your soul and your soul's purpose and your heart and your intuition, it doesn't matter what's going on around you. Like, to be really honest with you, Leanne, like, I was talking to some people not too long ago about this, and they're like, yeah, so like, tell us about like, what's going on in your life and business. And I was just telling them about all of the changes that have happened in the last 3 weeks. They're like, holy smokes, that's crazy. And I just laugh it off. And they're like, wow, like you're really strong. And that's nice to hear, but it's more like, yeah, well, there's no other way to be. And it's not about being strong. It's about being flexible. And you know what? The universe is funny. Like, think about it. Like, someone posted a little meme, and I'm not big into memes, but it was on like, hey guys, there's no April Fools this year because there's so much crazy shit happening in the universe. April Fools isn't going to like work or whatever. And I laugh because I'm like, yeah, but isn't this what we've all been talking about for the past few years? Like, I think of the leaders, I think of the fellow light workers and leaders in this space, and we're like, oh, a change is coming, a change is coming, a change is coming. It's like so much talk, and that's wonderful. But now it's happening. And in this space of it's happening, it's like, well, we saw this coming. Now we got to embrace. Now we got to create community. Now that we got to support people. And we have to stay strong within ourselves and not lose our marbles and start, freaking out and preaching fear to people. We've got to like this. We've got this. We've got this.
Well, I mean, I think that's the thing, though, is if you are out there preaching fear to people, you're probably in a space of moving through this process yourself still, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, I mean, yeah. I mean, there's no certainties ever. I mean, you bring up dating, and of course you bring up dating because, I mean, it makes sense. It's intimacy, right? It's intimacy.
I'm single, so I'm like dating.
Try and create these constructs in their relationships to provide them with safety.
Right.
And so if I just do all of these ABC things, then I'm going to have the long lasting exact relationship that I desire. Or maybe that's not what you desire. Maybe you want something short-term, kinky, fast, and fun. Okay. But, we have like these little ideas about what we will do and how we will create this like, perfect outcome that we want. And the thing is that's the really funny thing about intimacy. It's a messy affair. It's messy and it's unexpected, and there's no guarantees because people are always changing. So the world around us could be completely static and we would still be shifting. Like, it is like part of being a human is to shift and evolve. As we experience each other, as we experience ourselves. This is why people are going through huge changes, being isolated with themselves, because it's their relationship with themselves that is coming up. They are becoming more intimate with themselves because they cannot avoid themselves. They can't give themselves these sort of false promises, if you will, like that, if I'm just kind of like this, I'm not going to feel this, or I'm not going to feel that. That intimacy with life is feeling the full spectrum of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It is intimacy in a relationship and dating is feeling the full spectrum. You are, from moment to moment deciding, are you in? Are you out? Is this a yes to life? Is this a yes to this person? Is this a yes to you? Is it a no? Like we're constantly in every single moment choosing to be in intimacy with life or choosing not to be in intimacy life. But the great irony is, even if you choose to resist and not be in intimacy with life, you are still being in it. Because, that's part of that experience. If you need to be in resistance and be in your house right now, upset, and you're in, a lot of pain, and you're maybe relying on TV or drugs or alcohol or things like that, that is part of your intimacy process with life right now. That is that uncovering, that calling to you to step into something greater. Because at some point you're going to get tired of using those mechanisms, and you're going to be looking for a different path. And that's life sending you that invitation for this new path, a path that will be more loving, that'll be more honoring to yourself. And it's there. You can resist it for as long as you want. Life will find a way to invite you into more experiencing of it. And,
yes.
I don't know. It's interesting stuff.
I love that you just said the invitation's always there, because it really is. And I just think of, like, my past self 10 years ago. So I got married when I was 22 years old. And when I was younger, I had this vision of who I thought I would be, have 3 kids, have like I had this vision of my life. And interestingly enough, I'm turning 31, and all of that has fallen away, because at that stage in my life, that's what I thought happiness was. And I checked things off the list. And I think a lot of us collectively, in this isolation, but not only now, but when things come up in our life where we realize we wake up and we're like, oh, this isn't actually it. And what I mean by it doesn't mean it wasn't it before, but it's not it now. And so I really like that invitation space, and that things are constantly changing, because when I think of myself as 20-year-old, 22-year-old, getting married and all of that, and the life that I lived for almost a decade, is that things are constantly changing. And I think one of the biggest assets that we can have is to love ourselves fully and completely and deeply, to tune into our heart, our intuition, and to know what our values are. And also know that at any moment in time, no matter how much you've invested in it, whether it's a relationship, a career, or a mechanism, a coping mechanism, whether it's alcohol or drugs or food, it's never too late to change your mind, and it's never too late to start over, and it's never too late to walk away from something, no matter what your circumstances are. And there's an invitation there. And I know for me, one of my rock bottom moments, I'm pretty stubborn, well, less stubborn now. I used to be really stubborn.
On that one, I call it determined.
I'm very determined to prove myself that I'm right until I'm really not right. Was that, one of my rock bottom moments was getting a message from my soul that said, you need to change your life. And if you don't make a big change, you're going to get cancer and die in a year. And that can seem really out there for a lot of people. So could my waterfall story, but that's cool. It's my truth, and it's what's real for me. And we all got our own reference points, right? But it was so strong because I had all these other symptoms of not living my truth, of not honoring my values, or not even asking myself those questions, because I was so programmed to give my power away and to not go inwards. And so I had anxiety, depression, all those things. And from the outside looking in, I looked like my life was put together. Everything was great, but it came crumbling down. And in that moment, I knew that I had to change things. And that was the beginning of stepping into the life I have now, which from the outside looking in, I would lived out of a suitcase for the past 5 months, may not look as, put together as I did, 5, 6, 7 years ago, but I'm more fulfilled. I feel safer. I feel more at home than ever before. I doesn't matter what's going on outside of me, I'm rock solid. And it's because of that internal work, and because I had that invitation, as you mentioned, Leanne, which I think is such brilliant language. I love the way you structured that. The invitation to have my rock bottom, and the invitation to make a change. So our invitation is always there, and when we're ready to take action, we're so supported, and I think it's so wonderful.
Yeah, I love what you just said too about how our lives look, because I think that's going to be a big thing for a lot of people as we move through this. And I had a very similar experience to you, got married, this, that, had my corporate career, blah, 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 looked like amazing. Everyone's like, ooh, you're so fabulous. And I thought for sure I was leading myself towards my fabulous life, right? Check, 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 check. And then it's like, this is not working, full blown PTSD, breakdown, the anxiety, the depression, everything. And just really being forced into, funny enough, a place of isolation. When you're deeply depressed, that's really where you go. You go into this kind of like, I went to this deep, dark well where I was faced with myself and asking myself the question, what would make me happy? What did I really want? Because it wasn't obviously all of this stuff I had just checked off the box, So, when I had that invitation and I took it, and one of the things that came up, which I thought was brilliant that you said was, what's going to, can I say no to this now? I spent so many years building up that life. And it was like, do I step away from this marriage? Do I step away from this career? Like, can I do that? Like, yikes, I've just spent all of this investment in it, but it was like, it's not making me happy. So, what the heck do I have to lose? Like, if we can't go through our life feeling content with ourselves, what are we here for? And so, made that big leap, stepped away from a ton of different stuff. And yeah, my life, same as yours, it does not look maybe like as glamorous as it did back then. I don't have like multiple homes and, a couple $1 million, stashed away in assets and stuff anymore. I just don't. It looks messier. It looks more probably chaotic, but as you said, it feels more free. It feels more fun. It feels more amazing. Like, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I was so numbed out and I didn't even know it. Like, so numbed out, like, yikes.
Wow. I would okay, one of the things that you said that I'm just like, whoa, so good, is you said, you're referencing something that I said, and then you said something and I was like pause, frozen in time, this moment, let's pay attention. I'm paying attention. Is you said, I had all this investment in this time and energy towards this relationship. And I think that not only as women, but just humans, we have different ways or different belief systems, as I was talking about earlier, our personality, our ego, right? And how we show up every day. We have these ideas of how we should be. And because we've always been being that, we think that we need to continue being it, even though it's reached an expiration date. So in relationships, I don't know why, but moldy yogurt comes to mind. It's like it's like eating moldy yogurt every single day.
I've heard you say this is sludgy.
And I don't like yogurt, by the way, people. I really don't like it. Like, I don't like it. But let's say that, you're eating moldy yogurt every single day. Okay. Like, you see the mold, you're eating it and you're smiling and you feel sick every day. But you keep eating it because you're like, but I spent all this money and time at the grocery store or whatever it is, your life, creating this moldy yogurt so I should continue to eat it. No, that's actually insane. But we do that in our relationships. We do that in our career. We do that because we've always been away. But there's a time and a place to realize it's moldy yogurt. I've been eating moldy yogurt. It expired a year ago, 5 years ago, whatever. And now I no longer want to eat the moldy yogurt. And you turn away and you continue. But here's the thing. This is what I really wanted to get at before I went off on the moldy yogurt. We can wear this badge of honor of like, oh yeah, like I'm so committed to my struggle. I'm so committed to all of the time, money, and effort that I've put into this relationship, this career, this whatever, that we wear it and we're like, oh yeah, like I put in the work. And it's just like, cool, but that's a story that we're attaching to from our personality that is making the struggle real. And in the process, we're self-harming by wearing the badge of honor.
Like, I mean, I hear from people all the time. They're like, well, you know, like the sign of someone that's really good at relationships is being able to stay in them. And I don't agree with that at all. I think the sign of someone that knows how to be in good relationships is knowing how to move in and out of relationships as is appropriate. Sometimes relationships do need to come to an end. There's a point where there is no longer, a place for two people to be continuing on a path together in a way that is feeling good, fair, loving, honoring to both people. And there can be a way of, of moving into different directions, however that looks. It could be conscious uncoupling, you may stay friends. But I mean, this is here too, like, oh yeah, no, let's just become friends. But their actual relationship didn't function on the friendship basis when they were romantic in the first place.
Yeah.
So they would still actually have to do all the same work to stay friends as they would to stay romantically connected. So it's kind of like this, oh, but we're just going to stay friends. But there wasn't actually true friendship in that relationship before. That was actually where the dysfunction was,
Yeah.
So, I think it is just so important. Yes, stop eating the moldy yogurt if it's moldy and it's, and be okay with walking away and be okay with understanding that that is not a failure. I know that came up for me in my marriage, was that I was like, I was not going to get divorced like my mom did. I was not going to do that pattern. And then I realized that I was breaking family patterns because I was stepping away from an unhealthy relationship in a really powerful way, which I didn't always see growing up. It was more like things ended because of dysfunction, not because of, watching one of my parents step into a really grounded place and saying, this is just not, I'm not going to continue this pattern anymore. And I'm going to make the changes and I'm going to do the personal work. And I'm going to, set a good example for you as the kids about what it can look like to make powerful, empowering decisions in a relationship versus, just sort of being caught up in the dysfunction, I guess.
I love that. And I think that there's so much power in that. I grew up in this space when I was married. I was in that relationship for 8 years of it's not him, it's me. And so that's a great space to be in, because I'm a coach and I'm a guide and I'm all about, growing and expanding. But my default setting was, oh no, it's me. I gotta be better. I gotta be better. So I was like constantly like working on myself. And that was a way of me not looking at the dynamic in the relationship.
Totally.
And so when I finally got it and like woke up to it, that's when I was able to step out of the relationship. And when I look back on it, that was a beautiful person I was with. And we had so many amazing experiences, but it wasn't functional in that space. And we weren't friends after because we were married. And to me, it's not that I have a belief system around it. It's just for me, it wasn't appropriate to be friends after. And because of being in that dynamic of my relationship and then a relationship I was in after that, I made a rule to myself that I was going to be single for a year and not date. And I've done that. So because I wanted to get really aware of my default settings as we're talking about, like this stuff shows up in all areas of life. But for me, mine was in more the relationship department. And in that space of going inwards in that arena, I was able to get massive clarity of, wow, being in a relationship for me was a way of avoiding my truth and avoiding knowing the answers that I already knew. So it's very interesting how it can show up in relationships, in our career, and in other areas of life. And that's my invitation to you, is if this is a space that you're in, continue to go inwards, because once you're there, it's like rock solid. You get to make your own rules, which is really fun.
It's absolutely. I mean, we all get to make our own rules, and we find the relationships that work with that, and we find the lifestyle that works with that. And there's no one shoe fits everybody,
No.
which is, so often, when people come to my events, like the first rule is we just all hang our judgments up at the door, because
Yeah.
what is going to be super powerful and effective for one person in a relationship, and what they would really want, what really just fires them up, might not be your cup of tea at all. You might be like, wow, like I would not want that. And that's totally fair and fine. We all get to be unique and, different individuals, and have our loves and have our passions and have our choices and have our emotions and have our experiences. And at the end of the day, the fact that we have all those things actually is the thing that unifies us.
Mhm.
That ability to have that great scope is really that thing that binds us, and that we can go, wow, I just love that you've come on today and shared these experiences, and I can see so many differences in our lives and yet so many similarities. Isn't that really cool?
Yeah.
Right? How can I honor that in you and honor it myself too?
Mm.
And
Yes.
hear what you're sharing to me that is your truth, and
Mhm.
what also feels like my truth. And then
Mhm.
other things that maybe don't feel like they are my truth, but I know that they're your truth.
Yes, I love this. And I what I love about this conversation and all of our conversations that we have is it's never from a space of judgment, because every time we have judgment towards others, it's a judgment towards ourselves. So that's an inner reflection of your work and the work that I've done on myself, and the work that I think that we're all really committed to doing, because that's true connection to the universe, unity consciousness, and everyone around us, is seeing ourselves in them, and knowing that we've all walked a different path, and we are all walking each other towards more truth, towards more fulfillment, more joy. And this is just a beautiful community that you've created. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on this call. It was really wonderful. And have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Bye, everyone. Mwah, mwah, mwah.